my favorite definition of democracy is dictatorship by the masses, dictatorship of the masses. That means the majority feeling like their will is being exercised, that they are, that they are being seen and felt in politics, that decisions being made are benefiting the majority of the nation.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Edem, were you going to say something?
I just have a critique of this definition, which is that if you say a dictatorship of the masses, okay, that it means that in cases where the masses are not right in a certain context, then it means that marginalized people, for example, do not necessarily get to have a say. So I am thinking currently what's happening in Ghana with the anti-gay bill, where majority of Ghanaians are saying that, oh, this is what we want. We want you to pass this bill. But then there's also a section of Ghanaians who are queer, but who are in the minority. So it does not, from what I said, it does not it give room for nuances. And in this specific case, the majority is not exactly right. Do you see what I mean? So that's just my critique of that definition of democracy as a dictatorship of the majority. I think the part of the problem that we're experiencing within the African region is that we don't have a proper understanding of democracy, or the way that we understood democracy was thrown out for this modernized or foreign way of practicing democracy. So
it's tricky with democracy. I don't know whether when it comes to democracy, we can consider, as Edem is saying, right and wrong. Like, I do agree that, yes, sometimes the masses are wrong. I think in terms of a definition for democracy, it's a tricky one, but I would say something along the lines of a society kind of ruled or making decisions based on a selection made by the masses. And I say selection in particular because sometimes the options that are given, it's a bad place or a worse place, and they're just making the decision based on the best of two bad things. And obviously, and I think the question of whether the masses are right or wrong, or the marginalized are right or wrong, is separate from the question of what is democracy. That's not to knock what you're saying, Edem, at all. I just think democracy is normally you're given a bunch, or you're given options, and it's what the masses choose. Often I agree that the masses normally choose incorrectly, but I also, I would just say it's essentially what the masses choose out of a select number of options.
And it says, modern political democracy is a system of governance in which rulers are held accountable for their actions in the public realm by citizens, acting indirectly through the competition and cooperation of their elected representatives.
This isn't necessarily a definition, more so an observation of what I think the root purpose of democracy is to give a voice to everyone. So everyone gets an opportunity to say their piece about whatever is happening in their environment, in the society, in their area, whatever. And I think it then leads on to what Ruel just said, selecting. So whatever the highest, the main themes are, that's what you vote on. But the point of democracy, from my understanding and my perspective, is that everyone gets an opportunity to share their views. That doesn't mean to say that all views will be part of the selection. They may not be key points, but I think if we think about what democracy is supposed to produce, there is room for even the most marginalized people to have parts of what it is that they need, or parts of what it is that they are demanding. But that requires governance that is very interested, dedicated, intentional, and open-minded. if they're not that, if they've got ulterior motives, or if they don't have the necessary knowledge, skills, resources, interests, then certain things won't be able to take place. And I give an example. In the early 2000s, I think, we started to see a shift towards ableism and disability in the UK. And that only came about because of very specific things that were happening in society. Now, those groups are still very much marginalized groups. They're still very much underrepresented. They're still very much oppressed and discriminated against. But there have been many laws passed and many practical things that have been implemented on a day-to-day to improve their existence in the UK, being able to get on the bus if you've got a wheelchair, and then having a priority on the actual bus. Being able to apply for jobs that you otherwise wouldn't have applied for if you're partially blind, for example, being a receptionist and being partially blind, you can still get the job because there's software that employers are required to make accessible to the right candidate. Their ability or disability shouldn't exclude them from particular roles if they have the relevant skills. So those are just a couple of examples where the marginalized group can be represented in a democratic environment, but there has to be the intention, there has to be the interest, there has to be commitment to it. It has to be something that is, actioned upon.
To the largest extent, Africa has been practicing democracy for a very long time until the introduction of European democracy. I think that is where our means of being accountable has been stagnant. A democracy that is defined by Russian as a dictatorship by majority. I think that is what has actually made African where we are going now. That to say, we those who are born in Africa, I am a pure traditionalist. I'm sorry. It's not a way of introducing my religion. But there are certain things we abide to. But when you look through how governance in Africa perform, they don't stick to their code of conduct, or maybe the oath that they swear to office. People say A, and when they get to office, they do B. So the people who are calling them to be accountable to their actions, some are also doing it with ill faith. So everybody's more or less playing a mind game using the word democracy. But as Edem has said, that Africans might not understand democracy. Democracy has been well understood in Africa in centuries until the introduction of European democracy, which exempted powers in the hand of few people by creating the associates within the corridor of power, and everything is being controlled by them, but still it is being called democracy. There's no symbol of punishment. People are only being punished in a court, which is being formed by the same government. People being punished by the police, which is being recruited by the same government. If you have the upper hand, nobody punish you. You go away, you go scot-free with your crime or whatsoever that you have done against the people of the country. So I think Africa's introduction of the European democracy, that's where our problem generated from. We have lived by democracy. Nobody is being marginalized in the society. Everybody get his fair share of what he deserves. Nobody is being marginalized. Everybody is equal before our sisters. But after the introduction of the democracy from Europeans, everything has changed. So Africans do understand democracy perfectly. Thank you very much.
When I think of democracy and how it's defined, well, just think of it overall. The words that come to mind are accountability, but then that comes with transparency as well. And like sometimes when one is missing, it's quite hard for the other to actually, be there. So like when there's no transparency, it's quite hard to keep people in power accountable. And then that's kind of like where the downfall, so to speak, comes. So so I just wanted to share that. So I really like that definition because it's kind of like in line with what I was thinking, but also transparency, which allows us to keep them accountable.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. So the point of this whole event really was to discuss how we can. So a lot of the diaspora are making plans to move to Ghana. Not just Ghanaian diaspora, it's actually kind of Black people from all over the world are planning to move back to Ghana. But there are sort of issues that I can kind of foresee coming. The first thing, the very prevalent thing, is that the diaspora voices seem to be absent when it comes to issues on the ground. So when it comes to, like Galamsey is the kind of backdrop of the conversation that we're having today. We're going to bring Daryl on to start that conversation in about 2 minutes. But raising awareness of that. And Galamsey is something that, for those who don't know what Galamsey is, it's small scale illegal mining. And what's happening with the small scale illegal mining, again, I'll get Daryl to talk about all of that, is that in short, it's basically destroying the water and the land in Ghana. And it affects everybody. So as people are trying to raise awareness about this and call the government to account, I've observed that I'm part of quite a few diaspora groups, and it's just not part of the conversation. But I also see that a lot of us are very interested in what's happening in American politics, right? What's happening in Donald Trump won, and that people are having in-depth analysis about the American election, but we seem to be very kind of disconnected as to what's happening in our own spaces and what the implications of that are. But also, as an activist, I'm very curious as to how we can bridge that gap, how we can connect with people from the diaspora to kind of address some of these issues.